The lock clicks, a sound that usually signals safety, but tonight it sounds like a guillotine blade dropping. Your own living room feels like a crime scene where the body has been replaced by a ghost who wears your skin. Welcome to Swasti Diaries, where we uncover the dark, twisted reality beneath the veneer of a perfect life. You step inside, heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird, and the air smells of antiseptic and expensive lilies, a scent that shouldn't be here. You push past the heavy oak door, your eyes scanning the floor for any sign of a struggle, any scrap of evidence that proves you aren't losing your mind. There in the corner lies a discarded medical file, its edges curled and singed, a silent witness to a truth you were never meant to remember. The woman at the table turns, her eyes mirroring yours with a terrifying, hollow vacancy that suggests she has been emptied of everything that makes her human. Arthur stands behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder with a possessive, clinical grace that makes your blood run cold. "Evelyn, darling, you're home early," he says, his voice a smooth, venomous caress that shatters your sense of reality into 1,000 jagged pieces. You try to scream, but the sound dies in your throat, because he didn't call her by her name, he called her by yours. The floor seems to tilt beneath your feet as you realize the terrifying truth. You are the intruder in your own life, and the shadow in the chair is waiting for you to vanish. The seaside village of Blackwood hangs in a perpetual, suffocating mist, a place where time doesn't just pass, it rots. I walk down the cobblestone path, my footsteps echoing against the silence of the harbor, while the salt air masks the stench of something metallic and sharp. Everything here feels staged, like a film set abandoned in the middle of a scene, waiting for actors who have long since forgotten their lines. The houses are pristine, yet they stare back at me with windows that look like dead, unblinking eyes. I move toward the old town square, my fingers brushing against the cold, damp stone of the walls as I search for a familiar landmark. Every shop sign is polished to a shine, but the windows are devoid of goods, filled only with dust, and the lingering shadows of a life I cannot quite recall. There are no birds singing, no distant hum of traffic, just the rhythmic, mocking crash of waves against the cliffs, reminding me that there is no exit from this shoreline. A neighbor emerges from the fog, clutching a tray of porcelain teacups that rattle with the tremor in her hands. She offers a smile that is far too wide, far too tight, and whispers that I have been away for a long, long time. Her eyes, they are the most terrifying part. They hold a collective, hollow secret that suggests she knows exactly who I am, even if I have lost the thread of my own existence. I stand frozen, the porcelain clicking against the saucer, realizing that the tea she offers is bitter with a scent of chemicals that I recognize from my own nightmares. My pulse quickens, a frantic drumbeat in my ears, as I realize the village isn't just watching me, it is waiting for me to finally succumb to the erasure. I turn to run, but the mist closes in behind me, a wall of gray indifference that leaves me trapped in a town that remembers everything I have desperately tried to forget. I burst through the heavy mahogany doors of our home, my lungs burning with the sharp, acidic tang of the seaside air. The study is exactly as I remember it, the leather-bound books, the heavy scent of old ink, and the chilling silence that hangs like a shroud over every surface. But then I see her sitting in my velvet chair, sipping tea with my own hands, wearing my own favorite silk robe. She looks up at me with a terrifyingly blank expression, a hollow vessel masquerading as my own reflection, while the shadows in the room seem to pulse in rhythm with my mounting dread. I demand to know how she stole my life, my voice cracking against the cold, clinical stillness of the room. I grab a stack of papers from the desk, desperate for proof, but they are all blank, pristine, empty sheets of parchment that mock my frantic search for a past that is being systematically erased. Arthur steps into the frame, his movements calculated and smooth, his eyes devoid of any recognition or warmth. He looks at me with a detached, professional pity, as if I am merely a malfunctioning specimen in his private collection. He tells me, with a voice as calm as a surgeon's scalpel, that he has never seen me before in his life. I am a stranger in my own house, a ghost haunting a sanctuary that has already been scrubbed clean of my existence. My reality is fracturing into 1,000 jagged pieces, leaving me trapped in a nightmare where the man I loved has become the architect of my own disappearance. I fled the house, stumbling into the suffocating mist that clings to this village like a burial shroud. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird, as I scrambled toward the old archive building, desperate for a single scrap of truth that Arthur couldn't delete. The streets were unnervingly silent, the cobblestones slick with a damp, oily sheen that felt like a trap waiting to snap shut around my ankles. I had to find evidence. Something, anything, that proved I was more than just a ghost in my own life. I broke the lock on the archive door, my hands trembling as I tore through the dusty, forgotten ledgers stored in the basement. Every drawer I pulled open revealed the same terrifying pattern. My face, once prominent in the town records, had been meticulously cut out from every single photograph. It wasn't just an accident. It was a surgical, precise erasure of my very existence from the local history books. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, the reality of my own vanishing act hitting me with the force of a physical blow. Why would anyone go to such lengths to scrub a woman from the memory of an entire town? I whispered my own name into the dark, but the sound felt hollow, alien, and completely unrecognizable in the heavy, stagnant air. A sudden sharp sound, the rhythmic click of heavy boots against stone, echoed from the hallway, freezing the blood in my veins. I realized then that I wasn't just searching for my past. I was being hunted by the very architect of my erasure. The shadows in the corner seemed to lengthen, reaching for me with cold, invisible fingers as the footsteps stopped right outside the door. My breath hitched, and for a terrifying second, I wondered if I was already dead, and simply waiting for my mind to catch up to the void. The footsteps outside the archive door paused, a heavy, deliberate silence that pressed against my eardrums like deep-sea pressure. I held my breath, my lungs burning, as the shadow beneath the doorframe remained perfectly still, waiting for me to break. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs were anchors of lead, pinned to the cold, damp floor of this forgotten tomb. I turned back to the ledger, desperate to find one shred of sanity in this labyrinth of lies, my fingers trembling as I flipped to the final yellowed page. There, staring back at me in bold, unforgiving ink, was a death certificate bearing my own name, dated 3 years ago. The world tilted on its axis, the air turning thin and sharp. How could I be standing here breathing, sweating, and trembling, if I had been buried in the frozen earth 3 winters ago? The dates aligned perfectly with the day I supposedly met Arthur, the day my new life began. I felt a cold, jagged shard of realization pierce through the fog of my amnesia. If I am dead, then who is the woman who wakes up in that bed every morning? Is the marriage a dream, a scripted performance, or the ultimate medical hallucination? The doorknob began to turn, a slow, agonizing creak of rusted metal protesting against the inevitable. I am trapped in a ghost story, and I fear that I am the only one who doesn't know how the ending was written. The door groaned open, not to reveal a monster, but Julian, the archivist, his face a map of weary secrets and flickering candlelight. He didn't look at me, his eyes darting toward the hallway as if the very walls were listening to our frantic, shallow breaths. He pressed a cold, heavy folder into my trembling hands, his touch rough and smelling of ancient dust and decay. "You weren't supposed to find the ledger," he whispered, his voice a jagged blade slicing through the suffocating silence of the archive. I looked at him, searching for a shred of humanity, but found only the hollow gaze of a man who had watched too many women vanish into the ether of Arthur's experiments. He gestured to the rows of filing cabinets that stretched into the darkness, each drawer a tomb for a life rewritten or erased. He explained that Arthur wasn't merely a doctor. He was a sculptor of souls, using neurochemical cocktails to turn vibrant, independent women into compliant, hollow shells. "You think you are his wife, but you are his masterpiece," he hissed, the irony dripping from his words like venom. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone, as I realized my own history was just a series of clinical edits, a narrative tailored by the man I shared a bed with. Suddenly, the distant sound of heavy, rhythmic footsteps echoed from the top of the stairs, pulling Julian back into the shadows. He vanished before I could ask the one question that mattered. If I am his masterpiece, then who was I before he picked up the scalpel? The floorboard in the guest room gave way with a soft, mournful creak, as if the house itself were trying to hide what lay beneath. My fingers, shaking with a cold, relentless tremor, pried the wood loose to reveal a leather-bound diary tucked away in the dark, damp hollow. The air felt heavy, thick with the scent of stagnant dust, and secrets that had been buried far too long. I pulled it out, the leather rough against my skin, and felt an immediate sickening pull of recognition that shouldn't have been there. I opened the pages, my eyes racing across the ink, and the world began to tilt on its axis. The handwriting was mine, unmistakably, terrifyingly mine. Yet the words described a life of calculated malice and systematic cruelty I had no memory of ever living. It detailed the procurement of chemicals, the selection of victims, and the cold, clinical joy taken in the act of erasing someone else's existence. I felt a scream rising in my throat, trapped behind a wall of manufactured innocence that was rapidly crumbling under the weight of my own past. This wasn't the diary of a victim, but the blueprints of a monster. How could I be the woman who wept at Arthur's side, and yet the same woman who plotted such darkness with a surgeon's precision? My heart stuttered, the rhythm erratic and frantic, as the realization crashed down on me like a tidal wave of ice. I wasn't just his masterpiece. I was the architect of my own cage, and I had built it with my own blood-stained hands. The house feels smaller now, the walls tightening like a closing trap. I catch shadows moving in the hallway, not my own, but a reflection of a woman who walks with my gait, speaks with my cadence, and breathes in the same shallow, anxious rhythm that I thought was exclusively mine. She is practicing, refining the edges of my soul until there is nothing left for me to inhabit. The mirror in the corridor no longer reflects a woman in crisis. It reflects a vacancy, a beautiful polished shell waiting for the final occupant to step inside. I hear her in the kitchen, humming a melody I only ever whispered in the dark, a lullaby I thought I had invented to soothe my own fractured nerves. She is consuming my history piece by piece, drinking my life like a tonic designed to make her more real than the original. I approach the door, my heart a hammer against my ribs, and find her standing there, wearing my favorite silk robe, holding a cup of tea exactly the way I do, with the saucer tilted at that precise, nervous angle. She turns to look at me, and her smile is a mirror image of my own, devoid of warmth, echoing with a terrifying, hollow precision. "You look tired, Evelyn," she says, her voice a perfect, haunting carbon copy of the words I haven't spoken yet. The realization hits me with the force of a physical blow. She isn't just taking my place. She is waiting for me to fade away entirely. I am being erased, not by Arthur, but by the very ghost I helped create. And the exit door is already locked from the outside. The study is a sanctuary of secrets, smelling of ozone and old decaying paper. I move toward Arthur's mahogany desk, my hands trembling as I push aside a heavy brass paperweight. The air feels thin here, as if the room itself is holding its breath, waiting for me to uncover the rot beneath the polished surface. I am desperate for the truth, even if it kills me. I slide open the bottom drawer, feeling the cold metal catch against a hidden latch. Inside lies a stack of files bound in black leather, their edges frayed from constant handling. Each page is a meticulous documentation of a human life dismantled, my life, reconstructed in ink and chemical formulas. My eyes scan the charts, tracing the jagged lines of memory suppression, the precise dosages required to turn a person into a blank canvas. This is not medicine. It is a systematic slaughter of the self. A voice echoes in my head, Arthur's voice, smooth as glass and twice as sharp. "You were the one who asked for perfection, Evelyn," he once whispered, though I cannot recall the moment. I stare at the signature at the bottom of the surgical consent form, my own handwriting, elegant and cold, authorizing the erasure of my very existence. The realization is a jagged shard of glass in my chest. I didn't just witness this tragedy. I was the architect of my own undoing. I am the ghost in the machine, and the machine is finally shutting down. The door behind me creaks open, and the cold air of the hallway rushes in, carrying the scent of lavender and impending finality. The floorboards groan under a weight I do not recognize. Julian stands in the doorway, his silhouette blocking the dim light of the hallway. He isn't the savior I imagined, but a predator waiting for the kill. He steps inside, his gaze sweeping over the open files with a terrifying professional detachment. The archives he once protected were never about memory, they were about inventory management. I look at him, searching for a shred of the ally I trusted, but find only the hollow, steel-eyed stare of a man who tracks losses in a ledger. He closes the distance, his voice dropping to a low, rhythmic hum that vibrates against the silence of the study. "You were always the most difficult prototype, Evelyn," he remarks, tapping the leather-bound files with a gloved finger. "The original blueprint was flawless, but your conscience kept leaking through the cracks of the procedure. He isn't here to save me from Arthur. He is here to ensure the product remains stable for the next market cycle." My breath hitches as he pulls a small, silver vial from his coat pocket, the metal catching the light like a surgical blade. The finality of his movement freezes the blood in my veins. "There is no erasure today," he whispers, his tone shifting into something mocking and soft. "Only a final calibration to make sure the wife we promised is exactly the wife they bought." The room tilts, the walls closing in as the realization hits. I am not a person to them, but a luxury commodity reaching the end of its warranty. The storm lashes against the cottage, the wind screaming like a soul caught in a trap. Julian moves closer, the silver vial glowing with the cold, metallic promise of oblivion. I stumble back, my hand brushing against a hidden panel in the bookshelf that clicks open with a hollow, mechanical sigh. Inside, a bundle of photographs spills out, their edges yellowed and brittle with the weight of decades. I look down, and the world shatters into 1,000 jagged pieces of glass. Two faces stare back from the frame, identical, haunting, and terrifyingly familiar. One is me, and the other is the woman I thought was a stranger. The woman I saw in the garden just hours ago. She isn't an imposter sent by Arthur to replace me. She is the mirror I tried to bury. My sister. My twin. The realization strikes with the force of a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs. I see now that Arthur didn't just steal my life. He harvested our shared history to build a machine of infinite, interchangeable grief. You see it now, don't you? Julian chuckles, his voice a low, jagged rasp against the thunder. She was never a stranger, Evelyn. She was your insurance policy, kept in the dark until your own mind finally crumbled. He takes a step forward, the vial held steady, his eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. You designed this cage. You just forgot that you were meant to be the one trapped inside it. I back into the corner, the floorboards groaning as the storm breaks the windows open, letting the freezing rain wash over the evidence of my own monstrous design. The storm howls outside, but the silence inside this room is far more deafening. I trace the elegant, clinical handwriting on the ledger, my own handwriting detailing the dosage, the sequence of the personality-erasing injections, and the surgical precision required to break a human soul. My fingers tremble as I realize the ink is still fresh in my memory, a ghost of a past I desperately tried to delete. The architect of this nightmare isn't Arthur. He was merely the surgeon, the hired hand who executed the blueprint I drew with my own blood. I am the one who built this labyrinth of stolen identities, piece by agonizing piece. I look at the medical charts scattered across the floor, documenting the systematic destruction of my own twin sister, Clara. I forced her into this void, intending to inhabit her life while she withered in the shadow of my design. You were so meticulous, Evelyn, Julian murmurs, his voice dripping with a sickening dark admiration as he circles me like a predator. You didn't just want to replace her. You wanted to erase the very concept of her existence from the world. He isn't lying, the cold, hard logic of the files proves it, confirming that I chose to undergo the process myself, wiping my own mind clean to escape the crushing weight of my conscience. Now the woman I trapped in the garden is waking up, and she remembers everything. She is standing in the doorway, her eyes burning with the cold fire of a decade of stolen memories. And she isn't here for an apology, she is here to take back the life I stole, and to ensure I never wake up from this nightmare again. The floorboards creak under her weight, a steady rhythmic march toward the woman who destroyed her, and I know that my own creation has finally come home to claim its architect. The air in the room thickens, heavy with the metallic tang of fear, and the scent of ozone. Clara lunges, her movements jagged and primal, a decade of silence erupting in a single desperate strike. I stumble backward, my hand catching the edge of the mahogany desk, knocking a heavy brass inkwell to the floor with a deafening hollow thud. The shadows stretch and contort against the walls as we collide, two versions of the same soul tearing at the fabric of a reality built on lies. Arthur stands in the corner, a silhouette of detached indifference, his eyes tracking our struggle like a scientist observing a chemical reaction. He doesn't move to intervene. He only adjusts his cuffs, his calm demeanor a sharper blade than any weapon Clara holds. He is waiting, not for his wife to win, but for the stronger personality to emerge from the wreckage of this violence. "You built this cell, Evelyn," he whispers, his voice cutting through the chaos with terrifying clarity. "Now you must live or die within its walls." His words anchor me in the realization that I am the author of my own undoing, a prisoner of my own architectural cruelty. The struggle intensifies as Clara pins me against the window, the cold glass pressing against my spine. Her grip is iron, fueled by years of stolen identity, an agonizing void. Outside, the storm shatters a branch against the pane, a jagged crack spreading across the reflection of my own terrified face. I see the darkness in her eyes, a mirror image of the monster I created, and I realize with a sickening jolt that only one of us is leaving this room alive. The glass shatters, a spray of diamond-like shards cascading onto the floor, a final violent punctuation to a decade of silence. I shove Clara back, not with hatred, but with the cold mechanical precision of a woman remembering how to dismantle a machine. I scramble toward the mahogany desk, my fingers trembling as I grab the heavy, leather-bound ledger, the blueprint of our collective erasure. The room feels suddenly cavernous, the air thin and biting against my skin. I did not just find the evidence, I reclaimed the weapon I once forged to destroy my own past. The sirens begin to wail in the distance, a low guttural moan rising from the valley floor. I throw the heavy medical files onto the desk, spilling vials of clear, viscous chemical, the sedative that stole my sister's soul. Arthur watches, his composure finally fracturing as the red and blue lights begin to dance across the wallpaper, painting his clinical mask in the colors of impending ruin. He steps forward, his voice a pathetic, trembling whisper. "You are destroying everything, Evelyn. You are burning the only home you have left." I lock eyes with him, the mirror of his own sociopathy finally shattered by the weight of forensic truth. "This was never a home, Arthur." I reply, my voice steady, cold, and absolute. "It was a cage, and I am the one who holds the keys to its destruction." The police burst through the threshold, a swarm of uniforms and harsh, blinding flashlights. I stand amidst the debris of my own making, watching as they drag him away, a man stripped of his power, reduced to a common criminal in a suit. The house is quiet now, save for the rhythmic clicking of my own heels on the broken glass. I have exposed the lie, but as I look into the empty, vacant eyes of my sister, I realize the truth is a far heavier burden than the amnesia ever was. I am free, yes, but the ghost in the mirror is someone I will never truly know again. The heavy iron gates of the estate clang shut behind me, sealing away the wreckage of a life I built on a foundation of sand. The night air is crisp, tasting of rain and ozone, yet it brings no clarity to the fog swirling within my own mind. I leave behind the screams and the flashing lights, walking toward the village as if I am a ghost fleeing its own grave. I am finally free from Arthur's reach, but the chains of my own history are far heavier than any doctor's sedative. My footsteps echo on the wet cobblestones, a rhythmic reminder that I am still here. Though here feels like a foreign country I never intended to visit. I pause before a darkened shop window, my silhouette framed by the dim glow of a distant street lamp. I lean in, desperate to find a flicker of recognition in the eyes staring back from the glass, a memory, a scar, anything that confirms I am who I believe I am. But the face is a stranger's, a mask of cold, calculated perfection that I must have sculpted myself long before the amnesia took hold. It is not just my sister who was erased. It was the woman I was before the ambition, and the cruelty consumed my soul. I whisper to the reflection, asking it to tell me a secret, but the glass remains silent and indifferent to my plea. The cycle is not broken. It has merely reset itself, waiting for another architect to step into the light. To uncover more secrets like this one, make sure to subscribe to Swasti Diaries.